the more I think about the position that Katie Lamb MP has taken, the more disgusted and frankly enraged I feel about it. I've already made a video covering this issue, but I want to touch on a wider thing here. Because it would be easy to dismiss her as one MP. But I think what we're seeing in this country is normalisation of the far right. Katie Lamb presents herself as a pretty middle ground, Middle England MP, and you look at her social media posts, pretty standard stuff, visiting constituency events, that sort of thing. There's nothing overtly sinister about it. But when you really look at what she has proposed, it is absolutely something that could have come from the playbook of the National Front or the BNP. She has proposed that people who have legally settled status in the UK, that is people who have went through the Home Office bureaucracy, played by the rules, done everything asked of them, what she is proposing is that they be sent back to their home countries. So she's proposing to destroy people's lives. Because it would, with the emotional turmoil that she's proposing. I think it's disgusting, and I would say it's evil. I think what she is proposing is evil. And of course it will appeal to certain people who are pretty ignorant, who think that immigrants just come here and get everything handed to them and everything's straightforward. People who have never had the discomfort of having to go through that bureaucracy in another country. People who no doubt get a lot of their sources from disinformation, who will lap up everything Elon Musk tells them. People who, get drunk in Benidorm and then complain when the Spanish have a problem with it, or when the Spanish complain about them. And let's stop calling British expats. They're immigrants. But the reason I feel so strongly about this is not someone who's coming from some fringe far-right party. This is a Conservative MP, a mainstream party. So far, Kimmy Badenoch has been silent about this. She hasn't condemned it. Which suggests to me that she either doesn't want to prioritise it as an issue, she's embarrassed about it, and she just doesn't want to address the issue, or she agrees. Now, part of me thinks, well, the Conservatives are not going to be in power anytime soon anyway. It's extremely unlikely the Conservatives will win the next general election. But you know what? It's that's not really the point. Katie Lamb could well be a Reform MP. I mean, this is the sort of thing Reform's talking about. So you get far-right figures like her, and I'm calling her far-right because she's absolutely coming out with far-right ideology. That is far-right ideology to want to punish all immigrants. It's an extreme, callous, unfair, deeply unfair position to take. So I'm absolutely calling her far-right. I think she's a horrible human being based on this. And it just makes me sick that, she's in a position of some power. She's not in the shadow cabinet as far as I know, but she is a whip, I understand. I think she's a junior shadow minister. But she's been tipped as a future leader. So we're not talking about some obscure backbench MP here. And the thing is, she's not alone. If this was one sort of charismatic or outside figure, then okay, you could dismiss it. But I think there's probably quite a number of Tory MPs who would agree with her. Now, I'm open-minded enough to say that whilst I don't like the Conservative Party, I do not believe every Conservative would agree with this. I can imagine many Conservatives who say, wait a second, this is not a Conservative position to punish people who are legally here, who are contributing to this country, who have learnt English, who are working in our health service, who love this country, who in many cases might well be in the process of trying to get British citizenship, exemplifying the fact that they love this country. Let's be very clear what she's saying. She's not saying we need to, throw out people who aren't integrating or who are posing a threat to this country. She is talking about legal migrants. And what troubles me about this is the number of people who are lapping it up without really thinking about it. Oh, she says what most people are thinking. She's telling the truth. What this woman is doing is stoking up hatred against outsiders, really, by extension. And she's subtle about it. She's not saying it in such blunt terms, but by proposing this, that's what she is doing, really. And think of the emotional turmoil that she's going to cause for people. For example, someone who may have a foreign spouse, someone who has played by that's what's so sickening about it. We're talking about people who've done everything they've been asked to do. So Katie Lamb needs to address the fact that these people have paid money. Will they be compensated for that at the very least? It's blatant pandering to the far right, no question about it. She was careful to avoid any mention of race, but the implications are there. I just think it's disgusting. I'd expect it from Reform, but this is a Conservative MP we're talking about. So, the fact the Tories aren't going to win the next general election, I think they're done, to be quite honest. I can't see them. I mean, they'd have to pull back means beating Reform, but the thing is, this is the sort of position Reform has anyway. I mean, Reform wants people with legal status to have to reapply after 5 years, causing more bureaucracy, causing more stress. I mean, these people don't seem to have learned anything from the Windrush scandal. I really feel contempt towards Katie Lamb right now, to be quite honest. And I think she should face enormous pressure, peaceful. I emphasise peaceful, because any sort of violence or threats, all it does is serve to make her look like the victim. She doesn't deserve to be a victim. She's an extremist. She deserves to be exposed, called out and condemned and polarised, but has to be peaceful. I mean, look what happened after Kirk was assassinated. He became the victim, he became this hero, and I don't think he deserved that status at all. The guy had some very, very messed up positions, particularly around gun violence. But that's the problem when when there's violence against someone, no matter how despicable they are, they then become the victim. So there should be no violence or threats against Katie Lamb, but she should face enormous pressure. She should face enormous heat, and she should be exposed for the far right extremist that she is. What she is doing here is trying to make life harder for many, many people who have played by the rules, and that is evil. Deliberately going out of your way, using a position of power to hurt innocent people, that is, in my view, evil. She's not saying, we need common sense measures, people need to speak an efficient level of English, they need to integrate. That's all fine. I have no problem with that. What I think is disgusting is the fact that she wants to punish people who've played by the rules. She wants to overturn the fact that the Home Office has already approved them. She wants to cause emotional turmoil. She wants to hurt innocent people. That's what she wants to do. Why? Because I don't know if she thinks that pandering to Reform-esque votes is the way to go. I don't know if she's just a racist bigot, and she's very good at hiding it because she's not blunt about that. People have been commenting on photographs of her with ethnic minority people, saying, will they be amongst those who you want to kick out, Katie Lamb? Again, she was careful not to mention race, but the implication is there that if you're an outsider, particularly, she talked about cultural coherence. She didn't go into details about that. What does that mean? People from non-European countries, people from non-white countries. What does she mean by that? Because that, by definition, would include Indian doctors, Filipino nurses. It just sickens me to think these are people who work hard, who contribute to this country, and Katie Lamb wants to punish them. And if she is not talking about all of them, the onus is on her to really clarify that. But I have a theory actually about conservative women, and people might accuse me of sexism here. It's a risk I'll have to take. I think a lot of conservative women just try their best to cosplay Thatcher. They think by being as hardline and callous as possible, it makes them strong. I think they see compassion as a weakness. I really do. And I don't want to digress too much, but Japan's just got its first woman prime minister. Apparently, she's a big fan of Thatcher. I mean, conservative women talk about that as if it's something that's a great thing. Thatcher was a deeply controversial figure. Conservatives like to gloss this over. They like to pretend everyone loved her. And they like to pretend that her only critics were the far left. Not true. Many people on the centre left and many centrists had a problem with Thatcher. She was a deeply polarising figure. And I think a lot of conservative women, conservative men, absolutely, but conservative women have this idea because they want to emulate Thatcher, that compassion is weakness. I mean, look at Liz Truss. Look at Liz Truss bootlicking the MAGA movement these days. They just seem to think that the more hardline they are on issues like immigration, the more endearing they will be to a certain voter base. And it's true, they will. But this is a position that lacks any human compassion. You're talking about punishing people who've played by the rules. And I have to keep emphasising that. She's not talking about illegal immigrants. She's not talking about people who don't speak English and harbour, for example, Islamist ideology or hate this country. She is talking about people who have already been approved by the Home Office. So she wants to just slam that in their face. It's a betrayal of everything they've been through in terms of all the hard work they've put in, all the bureaucracy, all of the uncertainty that they've faced. So it demonstrates a inhumane lack of compassion, an inhumane lack of empathy. And I give Sir Ed Davey credit for calling her out. And I hope the Labour Party does as well. You know, they've got plenty of heat of their own on the China thing, but this is the sort of thing they could use to throw back at the Tories. But the problem with Labour right now is they are also trying to cosplay reform a little bit. Not as much as the Tories, but they're doing it. There's just too much pandering to the right. And the problem with this is it polarises the left. The Labour Party should be a centre-left party. But they're doing far too much pandering to the right these days. Far, far too much. So I'm going to wrap this up. But Kimmy Badenoch needs to show some backbone and make it clear this isn't official Conservative Party policy. Her silence will indicate that it is. Robert Jenrick, I've no doubt he will go along and support her, because Robert Jenrick's trying to out Farage. I think there's this component of Tories who are willing to pander to far-right ideology and wanting to punish all legal migrants, immigrants. It is basically a far-right position. It's not a moderate position. It's not a reasonable position. I don't think it's a mainstream conservative position, because the whole point about mainstream conservatism surely should be valuing hard work and valuing contribution to society. Well, if legal immigrants are contributing to society, how is it conservative to then punish them? That isn't conservative. That's far right. It certainly will do nothing to change the nasty party image that they have, which Theresa May brought up in the mid-2010s. And no, actually it was earlier than that. I think it was about the late 2000s she brought that up. David Cameron worked very hard, although I don't think he succeeded because his big society was a fraud. You know, austerity hurt some of the most vulnerable in society. But Cameron did try hard to modernise his party. And when you get this sort of position, you know, and we're not talking here about some old guard person, you know, in their 60s or 70s. This is a young MP. She's 34. So that's indicative of a sort of brand of young Tory that is trying to out-reform reform. It's just really troubling because this has direct consequences for people. It's going to cause enormous anxiety. I can imagine, you know, someone who has settled status in this country, they will be dreading the idea of a reform or conservative government through no fault of their own. And the more I think about stuff like this, you know, I do have hardline views on crime, and I maintain that. But the thing about crime is I think all the parties, I'm not confident in any party right now, quite frankly, on that issue. So frankly, it doesn't really make a difference. And I've always said that is about the legal establishment over political parties anyway. So I would almost, voting is something I take very, very seriously, but I would almost really want to vote for a centre-left party like the Liberal Democrats just to keep these people out. Because I'm really saddened and concerned about this pandering to the far right that we're seeing. It's mainstreaming hostility, it's mainstreaming this othering of people, and it's inhumane, really. It's not common sense, it's inhumane to tell people who've played by the rules, done everything asked of them, oh well, we're going to kick you out. Destroying people's lives potentially if they've made a life here, if they have a British spouse. I just hope to God that, I mean, with areas like this, you see why judicial independence is very important. And indeed why the European Court of Human Rights is important. Again, that's something the far right want to get rid of, and the populist right want to get rid of. But if they do that, then people in this sort of position won't be able to have any legal redress. I speak as a centrist. I want common sense controls on immigration. I don't want people in this country who have animosity towards this country, who are anti-British, who have a really poor quality of English. Obviously, there's certain common sense things involved in that. But this idea of punishing every immigrant, because really that's what it means, is extreme, it's outrageous, it's inhumane, and it's deeply unfair. And if Lam is not talking about every legal immigrant, the onus is on her to clarify she just means a small number of people. She has failed to do that. Instead, she's doubling down. Because again, it's this kind of idea that some female conservatives have, which is, and people might say I'm being sexist with that, but because you get hardline male conservatives, of course you do, but they're not trying to be Thatcher because, they're men. I think there's some women Tory MPs who just want to try as out Thatcher. They think that compassion is weakness. Look at Truss. I mean, her bootlicking of Trump these days says it all. And what I find deeply concerning is the mainstreaming of the far right. That's what we're seeing. At one point, the mainstream Conservative Party would have really distanced itself from the far right and condemned it. Now we're getting Conservative MPs talking as if they were in some far right party. So if Kimmy Badenoch doesn't speak out on this, really, I'll say one other thing which is important. People might say, well, how can the Conservatives be pandering to the far right when they're led by a black woman and when they have ethnic minority MPs? I actually have a theory about this, and not a theory, an observation. Taking far right positions, that is to say, for example, stoking up animosity towards all immigrants, wanting a total halt on immigration, blood and soil nationalism, it doesn't necessarily require white supremacy, although white supremacy is an overlap. Some of the most racist people I've come across and some of the most anti-immigrant people I've come across have been ethnic minorities. So I don't really accept this argument that a black or Asian person can't be far right. They can. And they can certainly pander to it. I've seen Tommy Robinson fanboys and fangirls who claim to be from minority backgrounds and who are in many cases. And we often hear that there were minorities on that Unite the Kingdom march. My take on that is absolutely, it was given a platform to far right figures. My question in any demonstration I would want to be part of is who's organising it. And that's the reason I haven't joined pro-Palestinian demos, because I don't trust some of the people in it, like Hamas cheerleaders and genuine anti-Semites. But with the Unite the Kingdom rally, of course there will be people who are genuinely concerned about immigration. But we're seeing a situation right now where you have racist thuggery, and that's what it is, absolute racist thuggery, being condoned on these islands. I mean, in Dublin right now, there's anti-migrant riots going on. The irony about this is the sort of people who are rioting in Dublin, they would claim they want to protect their women and children. I am willing to bet, if I could afford it, I would be willing to bet that a lot of them are supporters of Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter who is a rapist, who is a prolific predator of women. That's the sheer hypocrisy of these people. And Robinson has many associates who have been convicted of sexual violence offences. So when the far right use women and children to sort of claim that that's like they claim they've got a moral high ground, it really, really needs to be called out. So I don't say everyone at the Unite the Kingdom rally was racist. I don't say that for a second, but I definitely think what we are seeing in this country is a mainstreaming of far right intolerance. Absolutely. And it's deeply concerning. So I really hope that parties like the Liberal Democrats can continue to have a voice on this, because right now I would say the Liberal Democrats are the party I have most time for, and I don't agree with them on everything. Certainly I would take a more hardline stance on crime than they would, so I don't agree with the Lib Dems on everything, but they're the party that I'm least concerned about, put it that way. But Katie Lamb, you're disgusting, and what you're proposing is disgusting, inhumane, callous, and just plain wrong. And I call on all decent conservatives to publicly call her out. Distance yourselves from her, because if you don't, if you're a conservative and you don't publicly say that you strongly disagree with her position, then you can't complain about, being lumped in together. I call on all moderate conservatives to condemn this and make it clear that she doesn't represent you.